Hello everybody. Today we're going to be making some clip-on doors and clip-on windows for our previously made tavern tiles. We're going to be building these out of dollar store foam core. We're going to cut some 1.5 inch by 1.5 inch squares and some 1.5 inch by 2 inch rectangles. And here I'm just laying them out so that I'll be ready to cut and glue. And I'm going to be making 6 doors for this video. This is cheap dollar store foam core, and the outer pieces should have easy peel paper. Here I'm just going to glue the inner square to the outer rectangles, and I'm going to squish and move around the outer rectangle to press that hot glue bead as flat as possible. And I'm going to use my cutting mat to line it up as square as possible. Just hold it in place while that glue cools a bit. Add a little more glue, squish it on and move it around so that that hot glue flattens inside. It doesn't leave too much thickness. And I'll just hold it in place for a minute. And what this does is creates a little gap at the bottom that clips over the stub wall on each of the tavern tiles that we built previously, and it also leaves it wide enough to stand on its own in between tiles or in an opening. I'm just going to take a few minutes and glue all 6 of them together. Adding some more glue here in the outer rectangle. Squish that hot glue down as much as you can so that it doesn't take up any extra width, making a loose clip. You could use PVA glue or white glue if you prefer. Here I needed another glue stick, so I got one out of the bag and continuing on. And I'm just holding that so that when the hot glue hardens, it's nice and square. You should make spirals with your hot glue and not rings, and that way there's a gap for the air to escape when you're squishing the glue down. And I'm using my cutting mat just to make sure everything aligns nicely. That black square is just some old foam core that I have that doesn't have easily removed paper. Doesn't matter what color it is, ultimately I'm going to paint it all. One more to go. Squish down the glue. Make sure it's all aligned nicely. Squish down the glue. Make sure it's nicely aligned. Taking a few minutes to make it nicely aligned and make them sit nicer later. Now here I have peeled off the outer paper layer, and I have this template that I made from previous doors, and I've decided that I'm going to go with rounded top doors for the tavern. So I'm just tracing that opening, and then I'm using my gel pen to deepen that score a little bit. And I'll do both sides of all 6 of these doors. Once I've got the door outlined, I'm just going to score some planks vertically. I don't want to cut all the way through, I'm just scoring lightly. And then I'll chase those score lines with my ballpoint pen to chamfer the edges and make them look like 3-dimensional pieces of wood. And I'll use my mechanical pencil to score in some wood grain-like textures. This will really come out nicely when we're painting and dry brushing and highlighting, just like we did with the tiles. And then this is a piece of craft paper, and I'm just going to glue it around the outside to clean up the edges so that we don't see the gaps and lines in between the pieces of foam core. Just gives us a little cleaner look when we're at play on the table. It's only a few extra minutes. only making 6 doors here, so it shouldn't take too long. A little bit of glue. Press the paper down nice and flat, make sure it's nicely aligned. And here I trimmed the paper right to the actual width of the 3 pieces of foam core. Looking good. Super easy. Just trim it a little bit more, making it nice and clean and neat. And that's what we got. There's my square top template next to my round top template. So now that I've got all 6 doors set up with the paper wraps and the door scoring and texturing, you can see the little clip at the bottom. You can see the shape of the door. Now we're going to paint. And I'm going to go with the same color scheme that I used for the Tavern tiles. So it's going to be dark brown for the wood on the door, camel colored tan for the stucco walls around the door, and a bronze color for the door banding and knobs. You can see here I have another square of that old black foam core, and I'm just going to use it to help me hold these little clips while I paint them. So I just clip right on. And I'm going to hit the outsides with that camel tan color that matches the stub walls on the Tavern tiles we made. Just real quick, not too worried about getting some of the tan color inside the shape of the door because I'm going to paint over that a little more carefully with the dark brown to start. And we'll do all 6. Not being super careful. I just want to make sure I get full coverage of this tan color so that there's no paper or foam core showing underneath. I did not coat them with Mod Podge and black paint because they're small, and because I'm going to be coating them with matte Mod Podge afterwards, and I think that's sufficient protection for these little pieces. Time will tell us how well thought out that decision was. And a couple more to go. Slap it on the tan color. Getting all the surfaces. And the little stubs of wall that hang down the edge. I don't do the inside of the clip part. I don't think that's necessary. You don't really see it in play. I may change my mind later. Doesn't take too long. One more to go. Get the top. And the other face. And all 6 are painted. Wait for that to dry, and then I'll come back and I'll hit the doors with coffee bean medium dark brown, same as my Tavern tiles that we built before and the tables and chairs that we built before. Everything's going to be nicely unified because we're using the same paint colors all the way through. And taking a little bit more time just to make sure that I get all the surface of the door, even where we scored it with a mechanical pencil to bring out some wood grain. Kind of a flat-edged, spade-shaped cutting brush here that I got out of a dollar store variety pack, and it really helps me line the paint in pretty accurately. Sometimes adding a little water to the paint will thin it down and allow it to run into those score marks that we made with the mechanical pencil. I find that I alternate a dip in the brush water and a dip in the paint in between sides of each of the doors, and that gives me a nice watered consistency to the paint. Watered enough that it goes into those score marks nicely. It's not going to take too long. There's only 6 of them, so 12 sides, couple seconds per side. Having scored the outer edge with that black pen gives me a nice visual guide to work from, and if some of that black is showing through at the end, I like it. Kind of stands in for an actual gap between the door and the door frame. Not too worried about these doors not opening or closing. And use a little bit of theater of the mind to talk about open doors and closed doors. It's looking good. A couple more seconds with the brown. And last one. I don't know if it would be easier to do a square top door or not. I mean, it's all straight lines, but I think the visual interest of the round top doors is a nice touch here. There we go. We'll let those dry thoroughly. Make sure they're bone dry, at least an hour, maybe more. There. Now that they're dry, I'm going to highlight them with that same camel color mixed with just a touch of orange. And what that orange does is it kind of mimics the play of lamp or lantern light across the wood and gives a subtle difference between the color of the stucco surrounding the door. And you can see the herringbone wood grain score marks we made are popping there. They're going to look great on the table. Just a quick dry brush highlight. Nothing too serious. Get each door on both sides. And that's highlighting done. And then here I've got some cardstock, cereal cardstock that I've painted with a bronze colored paint. I'm going to cut that into very thin strips. We're going to use that for door banding and handle plates. Just these little details make the doors really pop. And it only takes a few more minutes. Just kind of eyeballing it here. It's okay if there's a little bit of variation because the strips are going to be an inch long or so. And I'm going to cut them to relative dimension. First I'll straighten them a little bit. And I'll hold them against the door and give them a little snip when they're the right length. And again, I'm just eyeballing it. And I'm just going to show you one door here. Very straightforward and very similar process for all 6 doors. Just a matter of cutting each of your little cardboard strips to length. I set them aside here. And I'm going to use standard carpenter's glue or PVA that's kind of a yellowish color, and a matchstick to apply it. And I'm not too worried about squeeze out or this glue showing. I brush a little bit of the squeeze out off, but once it dries it'll be clear and you won't even see it. And I'm just trying to do my best to make sure that they're roughly square on the door. I'll just cut a little square of the bronze colored cardboard and I'll add a plate for where the handle's going to be. And put that in. And I'm just going to use a matchstick to make sure it's nice and square with the side of the door. And I'll do that for all 6 doors. And here you can see the 6 doors with handles and door plates. And a couple of dungeon doors that I made previously. And you can see on the dungeon doors, I have a little dollar store bead acting as the door handle or doorknob. And I'm going to do the same for my tavern doors. Looking good. And here's the finished product with some tavern tiles that we made in the previous videos. I got some doors clipped onto those stub walls and you can see that they look good. Pop off the magnetic tiles. And you can see that the doors hang in there pretty good, even though I'm moving this around for the camera. Looking good.